Hello everyone. Welcome to the new and reopened Horace Williams Airport in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. In today's video, we're going to talk about noise abatement procedures, especially when it comes to the pattern. Right now we're on runway 27 in a Piper Archer. This is a single-engine, four-cylinder airplane, very representative of the noise profile of most of the aircraft that would operate out of Horace Williams Airport. So right now we're on runway 27. Now you notice our altimeter showing 500 feet. That is the elevation of the airport. And traffic patterns are conventionally flown at 1,000 feet above the ground. So we're going to go up to 1,500 feet. There's 60 knots. We're going to rotate. Let the airplane accelerate to 80 knots, which is approximately our best rate of climb speed. Right now we're on what's called the upwind leg. That is the leg that is straight off the runway. And the next thing we're going to do is there's going to be a right 90-degree turn onto what's called the crosswind leg. Now the crosswind leg is typically performed once you get to 700 feet above the ground, which would be 1,200 feet, right about here. Once we get to 1,200 feet, we typically look out for traffic, and if it's clear, we'd begin our turn. Now here's the problem with doing that this way. If you look right now, we're about 700 800 feet above the ground, we're full power, in a turn, and we're above a neighborhood. Well, not very friendly to our neighbors. We'll continue. In the crosswind leg, directly over all these houses, full power. Now we get to 1,500 feet, we level off the airplane, and now we lower our power setting, and we turn from our crosswind leg over to what's called the downwind leg. And see, we're doing this turn directly over these houses. Now we have lowered the power, so noise is not as big of a concern for this development down here, and the high school would be an appropriate distance from the runway for the downwind legs. That would be pilot's marker for where to put the airplane parallel to the runway. It would be over the high school. We're now back on runway 27, and let's try a modified departure procedure. So we're going to do the same exact thing we did, runway 27, accelerating to 60 knots. 60 knots, come off the ground, let the airplane accelerate to 80. Now what we're going to do this time is, instead of turning crosswind at 700 feet above the ground, or 1,200 feet indicated, we're going to continue this upwind leg until pattern altitude, till 1,500 feet. What that does is it takes us away from the neighborhood, and it allows us to reduce the power and get higher before flying over that neighborhood. See, here is 1,200 feet. If we turned now, that turn would put us over this neighborhood. So what we're doing is we're continuing to 1,500 feet. By doing that, we are flying over some of the neighborhood, but we are higher at this point, and there's fewer houses on the south side than there are on the north side. See, now we've leveled off at 1,500 feet. We're reducing the power, and you can see now that we're turning way out here, there's more fields, the density is less, and while ultimately we are flying over some houses, we're 300 feet higher than we would be otherwise, and we've reduced the power drastically than we would be otherwise. In addition, because we've leveled the airplane off and we're not at a nose-up pitch attitude, we're not pushing the sound down towards the ground. That's what I suggest on the 2.7 end for noise optimization. Now let's talk about the departure procedure off runway 9. The biggest obstacle when it comes to noise abatement is the development across the street on the departure end called Aura Chapel Hill. And clearly, it is our responsibility as pilots to make sure that we mitigate noise for those neighbors. Here would be a typical departure off runway 9. Rotate, we'll let the airplane accelerate to 80 knots for our climb out speed. And we're going to maintain a conventional upwind straight off the runway. Now as we cross the street, you will see this is clearly a problem because we are directly over the development, full power, And we're overflying at about 900 feet, 400 feet off the ground, full power, and clearly that is not a very friendly maneuver. So we need to find an alternate solution. So we'll try this again off runway 9, but this time what we're going to do is when we get to 600 feet, 100 feet off the ground, we're going to do a right turn to a heading of 110 degrees. That's a 20-degree right turn. I've tested this with multiple different types of aircraft. We have the obstacle clearance for this. By the time you get to the trees, you'll be well above that. There's the 600 feet. We're going to begin the right turn. And what you see is that it clearly has us flying away from the development, away from the residential areas to the north. And instead, we fly over the YMCA, which is not a residential area. We don't fly over Aura Chapel Hill at all. There are some houses down here, but fewer than there are to the north. We also avoid flying directly over the schools over here. And you can see that offset from the runway. Now on this end, what I recommend doing is, instead of 700 feet AGL, is turn crosswind once you're abeam the lake out here. What that'll ensure is, once you're turning crosswind, your crosswind leg will be over the lake. No one lives on the lake, and the water can absorb the noise instead of people. So that is the noise abatement procedure for runway 9, and I've tested it with 5 different types of airplanes, measuring the noise reduction from the Aura Chapel Hill development, and doing this will cause a noise reduction of 10 to 20%. And that is how we will be friendly to our neighbors at the new Horace Williams Airport.